Good morning, everyone. It's 8:30, and thanks for joining us for Face the State on this Labor Day weekend. I'm Dennis House. We are now in September, and there are only 65 days until Election Day. There have been 3 polls released recently, which show Ned Lamont and 2 of them leading Bob Stefanowski. A third shows them neck and neck. But what do those polls mean? With us today, Stefanowski's running mate. He is the candidate for Lieutenant Governor of the Republican Party, and State Senator Joe Markley. Senator Markley, good to see you here on the program.
Pleasure to be with you, Dennis.
Let's go back to primary night. Were you surprised by Mr. Stefanowski's victory that night? Because it was a 5-way race, and a lot of people didn't know who was going to win.
I certainly wasn't certain what was going to happen, but I wasn't surprised because I had been out talking to voters, and I heard his name repeatedly, more than anybody else's, so I knew that his message had gotten through to people.
What has your working relationship been like the past 2 weeks?
It's good. It's been good right along. I've known him since the very beginning. I've spent time with him, not just as a candidate, but I've actually sat and talked with him on several occasions during the campaign. So I have a very comfortable relationship with him personally. Of course, there's a certain amount of coordination now that we're part of the same campaign, which is a work in progress. But I think come next week, when the campaign really gets going after Labor Day, we will be in very good shape.
What's your role in the campaign so far? Have they told you?
I will be out there giving the message, and I'm sure that to some extent I'll be giving the message to the party faithful too. I've always said that it's very important to have the base motivated. I was able to get a great ground game together for my own primary day, and I want to try to expand that for the general election.
As you know, the cornerstone to Mr. Stefanowski's campaign is getting rid of the income tax, which you fought against back in 1991 when it was a big battle in the state legislature. What's the feasibility of actually getting the income tax repealed or eliminated? Because a lot of people don't think it can be done.
Dennis, over time, it certainly can be done. The state operated for hundreds of years without an income tax. There's still, I believe, 9 states that don't have an income tax. None has passed one since we did, having seen the damage that it did to our own economy. It's not something that's going to happen quickly, and you can't necessarily put a certain time frame on it. But the idea is that if we start cutting taxes, it will be encouraging to business. It'll keep businesses in state. It will make it more attractive. And the economic growth will give us the opportunity to continue cutting taxes.
Well, there are some voters who think it's going to be done right away because this is what they have been told, that they're going to get rid of the income tax. If Mr. Stefanowski becomes governor, will the income tax be gone by the end of his first term?
His own plan does not have it happen in his first term. I believe it takes 8 years under his projections before the income tax could be eliminated.
Completely gone.
It's completely gone, yes. And it will depend on the health of the economy. But nothing would help our economy more than these tax cuts, which have been the core of Stefanowski's campaign.
What will voters notice in the first year if he's elected, first year of him being governor?
There is going to be a serious restructuring of state government. We're talking about a man whose corporate experience has been turnarounds, going into distressed businesses and immediately making sharp changes with zero-based budgeting. Something that's a buzzword, but something that Bob Stefanowski has actually done. Going in and saying to the departments, your budget now is 0. We're going to build it back up based on what you really need to do. He needs to make serious cuts to get us through a budget cycle without a tax increase. And we need to make targeted tax cuts to send a signal to business and to people of wealth here in this state that are fleeing, that they should stay here and they should give us a chance. If that can happen in the first year, we'll put this state back on track.
Are there departments that could be eliminated altogether?
Oh, I'm sure there's perhaps some smaller departments that could be eliminated.
Such as?
Well, I wouldn't on the fly want to start naming them, Dennis. I mean, honestly. But I think that it's within the existing departments that we need to find the savings. I think there's a lot of savings to be found, for instance, in the Department of Transportation, where there's a huge kind of mid-level bureaucracy. In fact, throughout state government, back full 8 years ago, Gail Schlossberg and a commission came up and said there were about 3,000 mid-level manager positions that could go. Nothing really has been done with that. And that's what I think Bob Stefanowski has the expertise to make happen.
In just a few minutes, you're going to be hearing from 2 members of the Fiscal Stability Commission. They want a full-time legislature. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's necessary. I don't know that we would do our business any better, any more intelligently if we were there all the time. You know, part of the problem is we behave like, I often say, like bad college students who let the paper go until the night before it's due. It's not that we don't have time, it's that we don't take advantage of it. It's one of the things I have to say in being Lieutenant Governor and presiding over the Senate that I think I could have a good effect on in moving the business ahead more quickly so that everything isn't jammed up to the tail end. I don't think a full-time legislature is the answer.
You've spent many years at the Capitol. Looking around that building and the legislature and the governor's office, what could be cut in those departments?
I think well, I have to say, to speak about the legislature, there's some very good people. We have a tremendous nonpartisan staff, which I think is critical to legislators being able to do their jobs. We also have very large partisan staffs that have grown since my first time around in the legislature. I think it's conceivable that the partisan staff, many of them are my friends. I'm not looking to see anyone lose their job, but I believe those staffs could certainly be reduced in size. And some of the committee staff, which has become full-time staff, I think that we could back away from that and go, you know, when the legislative office building was built, I think it was an invitation to fill it. And that's always a danger.
Let's talk about some of the unity issues that might come up in a five-way race. Mr. Stefanowski did not get a majority of the votes. What kind of outreach has been made to the other candidates to sort of get everyone on board with you guys?
Well, I know he's spoken with all of them. And, you know, I don't really think there's going to be any problem because all five of them were essentially running on the same thing. Maybe not specifically the income tax repeal, although the two main candidates, Stefanowski and Boughton, both were campaigning on that. But all of them have been talking about the need to reduce the size of state government, not to increase taxes, not to go forward with tolls. I think there's been unusual unity around the issues in the Republican Party. And I don't think anything happened during the primary that's going to threaten that. I think Republicans throughout the state see the drastic need for us to take charge. And I think all of us were willing to get behind whoever came out victorious on primary day.
What is your reaction to some of the polls that have come out so far? The Quinnipiac poll had Ned Lamont way ahead of Bob Stefanowski. There was another poll that was a little bit closer, and another poll that had them neck and neck.
Well, I wouldn't pay too much attention to them at this point. I'm not one to say that I don't have any confidence in polls, although certainly we've seen them fail plenty of times recently. I do think that Ned Lamont knew where he was in that primary, undoubtedly. So he was able to look past it. The Republican candidates really were focused on primary day, and their targeting was focused on Republican primary voters. Now is when Bob Stefanowski and the entire Republican slate will be reaching out to the general voter. And I think those numbers will change very quickly when they get to know Bob.
State Senator Joe Markley, the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. We thank you so much for being on the program today.
My pleasure, Dennis.
And best of luck this fall. When we come back, we're going to be talking with two men who are on a blue ribbon panel, you might call, put together by state lawmakers and the governor to sort of fix Connecticut. We'll get their take on this, and we welcome your comments on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can also watch past episodes of Face the State on YouTube and the WFSB app.